Hello and welcome to our special program, To The Point. The general elections have been announced. It'll be 9 phases and almost 81 crore voters will cast their franchise. Today we have with us a senior leader of the Congress party, their spokesperson and chief whip in the 15th Lok Sabha, Mr. Sandeep Dikshit. Sir, welcome to Rajya Sabha TV. Let me straight away begin, since the dates are already announced now. I would say the game was all set. It's just about to begin. The first question which I have is, what is it that you believe is the main reason that people will vote for Congress again? Because this is the third time. People say it's high, the anti-incumbency factor is high since you have been in power for 10 years. What is it that you believe that people will vote for you?
I firmly believe that normally people vote for the hope of a better future. Right, and that's very clearly so. It's not, what happened. It's not various things that happened in the past, but ultimately they vote for the hope of a better future, and therefore they always peg on to candidates or parties or a mix of both, in which they believe that future, both in their constituencies and nationally, would be more secure, and the feeling that this particular formation or political party or person would be able to do better for them. Now, that is based on 2-3 things. One is, if it's an incumbent government, how they have performed. So that gives you an inkling of the fact as to how much confidence you have in their abilities, and therefore in their abilities to deliver further. And whether you had a general feeling of, a goodness in your mind as to the fact that, no, in the last 4-5 years, they did good for me, or for my family, or for my area, or whatever may be the particular circumstances. Now, with that confidence or with that doubt, whatever may be the case, they will also look at what is it that they are trying to give for the future. In which case, they will look at their present set of problems and unassociated with your manifestos or with the promises. And they believe that if you've been able to deliver, you shall be able to deliver future. If you probably lacked in some way or the other, they will assess as to whether that lacking is something, which comes because of lack of will or because of circumstances, and then they will assess you for the future. And I think that's how, because we've done well and we've done reasonably well in spite of all the other problems, and the kind of the future that we are projecting, both in terms of our programs and our leadership, I think that is something that will give people confidence to come back to the Congress.
So you're saying it's going to be a mix of 3 things: the performance, the past performance, the promises for the future, and the candidates and the faces which people...
Candidates include local candidates as well as overall leadership.
As well as the overall leadership. Now, let me come to them one by one. Let's start with the past performance. The tenure of the UPA2 has been shrouded in a lot of controversies, be it the controversy over the allocation of coal blocks, the 2G spectrum allocation, the Commonwealth Games, the controversy surrounding them. We've seen Parliament not being functioning because of several issues being raised. Then there have been setbacks to the government, whether be it in case of CVC, just recently in case of Lokpal, setting up a Lokpal. The point is, don't you believe that UPA1 was much better than UPA2, and this time it's going to be a really uphill task for the Congress to go ahead and convince the voters?
No, see, let's not confuse UPA1 and UPA2. First of all, let me be very clear. The coal allocation or the 2G was actually reports on what happened in UPA1. So it's not that these are something that UPA2 did. Okay, so, the auditor had a particular point of view and the auditor stated a particular point of view, and people who actually don't understand audit reports try to make much more out of it. So I think what happened in the case of 2G or in the case of the coal report or even in the case of Commonwealth is that we were perhaps not able to, deliver to people what the reality of these reports was. Ultimately, in the case of 2G or in the case of coal, wherever misdemeanors have been found, cases are going on, government has not protected anybody. In the cases of Commonwealth also, all the cases were given to CVC, were given to CBI, given to independent authorities. They did their investigation. Wherever cases have been found, cases are going on. And in fact, in all 3 cases, the actual output of investigations and where some misdemeanors have been suspected is far, far lower than what was projected both by the media and by the audit reports, and that always happens. So the reality versus perception is actually a big difference, and one of the main challenges for us would be to place the reality in front of people and to show as to how the perception is actually something that is promulgated.
So you agree that since the perception has been
the controversies are not something based on really the reality of the situation, but perhaps a perception problem, and we've had a perception management problem. Secondly, with regard to some of the setbacks, these are, I don't think these are particularly relevant. These are more dramatic events, whether the CVC was appointed or not, and this, even in this terms of the Lokpal, this is an individual's point of view. My whole thing is, that ultimately Lokpal has to be appointed, and I've been appointed through a fair process. So I think the government is pushing through that. We could have always waited for somebody else to appoint them. But I think government has been pushing that, and sometimes you may feel that there is a sense of urgency with regard to bringing in of names. And I think some of the controversies created by people in this, I think, are needless. I think it's more important to do your work. So all I'm saying is, I don't think these are particularly, something that's going to really, alienate the electorate from what. Yes, they are making an impact and shrouding some of the tremendous achievements on the economic, social and legislative front that UPA 2 did. And I think it will be our endeavor to take off that shroud of these things from the real issues of development and progress that the UPA 2 did.
You said there has been a perception mismanagement. That's a candid observation, I must say, because many in your party believe so, and there are critics who also argue that the ruling party could have handled many things in a much better way, which it did not. Do you believe that now the time is lost? The party should have realized a little earlier that there is a perception mismanagement, things should be done a little in a different way?
Could be. Maybe we were late, maybe we were not. I can't say that. Sometime I'll also tell you, being a national spokesperson, I know the efforts made by both the government and the party and the constituent parties of the UPA to try and correct a perception. But sometimes I think the momentum of other people becomes far stronger, and I think somewhere down the line, because of the attractive nature of these controversies, I think it was very difficult for media and others to actually take a balanced view. And I think the very excitement that these numbers of 1,76,000 created. For example, I'm sorry to say, but it shows the illiteracy of people where they relate supposed revenue loss, which came through a deliberate policy decision, to corruption. Revenue loss is not corruption. Every year, for example, a government reduces a tax rate on a particular amount. You can always say that a tax rate is also a revenue loss. So this is a revenue foregone. If it is done with consciousness, if it is done with public welfare in mind, if it is done for a correct reason, then there is no problem in having a revenue loss. Ultimately, for example, in 2G, if more was charged by private operators, they will in turn charge more from people. So it's actually you and me who would have paid that 1,76,000 crores, not Mr. Raja or anybody else. The issue of a criminal case against Mr. Raja or others, whether they are guilty or not, only courts will see to it, is the fact that in the implementation of the policy, there were areas where wrong procedures have been discovered by the CBI and others, whoever have filed cases. Now it's between the CBI or the prosecuting agencies and the courts to decide whether the CBI's assumptions are right or wrong. So let's not get into that, since it's a sub judice matter. And the reason I'm saying this is because people ask, if there's nothing wrong in that 1,76,000, why the cases? So 1,76,000 is a conscious policy by government to lose that revenue so that telecom rates don't go high. Now, you can always argue and say, and I would say that CAG was right because CAG wants government to earn more. But government was more right because government believes that revenues foregone is ultimately.
So you mean to say that in all those cases the intent was right? It was just that the calculation would have thrown up some other figures.
Also, not just calculation, the implementation may have been a problem. In which case, CBI and prosecuting agencies are doing their job.
Okay, good. So we'll take a short break here, and when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Mr. Sandeep Dikshit, and we will talk about the promises, their candidates, the politics of coalition. Welcome back. Congress leader Sandeep Dikshit is still with us. Sir, we were talking about the factors responsible. We spoke about the issue of corruption, the issue of several other issues which have been pointed out as lapses by the UPA government. One major argument which goes against the UPA in these elections, and specifically against the Congress, is inflation. The issue of rising prices of essential commodities, something which this government does not seem to have been able to get a hold on. Do you think that this is going to be the real pinching point for the Congress in these elections?
See, first of all, it's a real problem. It's a human problem. And I think government and all its ministers and the Congress is far more worried than people actually believe. And inflation is a very, very serious problem because it hits every person. Only issue is whether inflation came because of wrong policies by the government or because there are circumstances that have led to inflation. Now, it's quite okay to say that there has been international pressures, especially because of petroleum and other areas. There have been pressures of demand and therefore there have been some pressure on inflation. And much of the inflation that has come about is because there is a particular momentum of economic growth coupled with internationally what's happening, and that has led to inflation. And right or wrong, UPA is suffering because of that. Any other government which have been there would have, had this suffering. And remember, we could have padded some of these costs by high subsidies. Large number of those subsidies were there, even are today there. But please remember, ultimately subsidies lead to a deficit. And all economists tell us that if there is too much of deficit in government finances, that also adds to inflation. So in fact, some of the inflation is there because there was a problem of international economy. Some have come because we've tried to keep that inflation down. So that also has a downstream impact. But of late, if you see in the last year or 2 years, this has moderated. Food inflation has also gone down.
Which has not gone down well, something with the people, because the government was headed by the well-known economists.
No, that doesn't make, economists can understand economics and therefore put into motion issues that will change the negative impact of economic progress over a while. But even an economist cannot change it immediately. And there are certain things that just happen because of the way it's happening. But all I can say is that some of the inflation has also happened because of the progressive policies of the government. Remember, we have more than 2.5 times increased the minimum support prices. In pulses, it went up from 1200 to 3500. In wheat, it went up from 580 to 1300, 1400. So when you more than double what you are giving to the farmer, obviously there will be a more than doubling impact on both wheat and paddy or rice as people eat it. And if you see the differences, during NDA time, I think atta was 11 rupees, 12 rupees, 13 rupees. It's about 22, 24 today. So that's about the only change that's come about. Had there been extraordinary change, maybe atta had gone up to 40, 50, 60 rupees. I could have understood it came because of wrong policies of the government. But remember, a lot of money has been put into the hands of farmers and into the agrarian economy. And that's very clearly come out with the fact that rural wages have gone up. Narega has had an impact. Rural poverty rates have declined sharply. And across the board, people agree to that. But you may always debate in numbers. But there has been a substantial change.
This can be an endless debate. But don't you agree that this will cost you a little bit electorally?
It may. I mean, obviously, there is a negative view with which people are looking at UP. But I can say with honesty and with a lot of sincerity that I think some of it has happened because we did progressive policies, and ultimately people realize ultimately farmers are getting more, therefore agricultural laborer wages are going on and they will have a positive impact there. In cities and other areas, it has had a negative impact, and I think as a government, we are aware of the fact, and we are of the fact that we have not been able to manage it to the extent we could have, but not because we didn't try our best, but because circumstances were like this. And I'm personally saying, I think government is very, very seized of the fact. All I can tell through you to the people of India is that government is extremely worried about inflation, is extremely sorry that it's not been able to do to the extent people wanted it to. But all that I can say is they've done their best and nobody else could have done better.
Okay, let's now move on to a more significant aspect of these elections. That's the faces which people will see. The candidates, once again, the Congress party seems to have lagged behind others when it comes to announcing the names of the candidates. Election dates have been announced, and by the time the election dates were announced by the Election Commission, BJP had come up with a list. It may be just 40, 50, names of the candidates. Aam Aadmi Party had come up with a list. Other regional parties, including some of the allies of the Congress itself, or maybe those like-minded parties and those in opposition, they have also come up with the list of the candidates. Congress party has not declared even a single candidate till the time the dates of the elections were announced. Don't you think that's also something which goes against the party's own decisions based on several recommendations of the Anthony Committee that the candidates should be advanced much?
No, I can understand. I mean, there is always a good thing if you announce candidates earlier. But please remember, us and our allies have about 270, 280 sitting members already. So, while other parties need to announce earlier because they hardly have any MPs, we are already in a strong position. Almost 50% to 55% of India already has UPA and its allies sitting in various positions. So, there are campaigns already on, and in the other places, processes are on. And please remember, UPA is also a coalition, and therefore discussions with coalitions and discussions with other parties is an important aspect. BJP just had only 100, 105, 110 MPs, so they just renominated a few. Whereas in case of Congress, there is also some realignment going on in certain states. I've seen, for example, RJD came on board, discussions going on in Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu and other areas. So, some realignments may go on. I'm not saying realignment will happen, but realignment in the sense more people may join us, and therefore, some changes may happen to the kind of coalition we had 4-5 years ago. I don't know the reality, but I can see it from the newspapers, and therefore, obviously, it will take a little more time for us to announce our candidate. But also remember, you are a responsible party, and when we announce our candidates, it is a combination of the best we think and the best our coalition gives us.
Okay, you spoke about your partners, coalition partners. We all know that this is an era of coalition politics, and UPA from being a coalition of 23 parties or 22 parties, almost 2 dozen, has now come down to somewhere around 3, 4, 5 to be counted on a single hand maybe. We have 3 partners at least inside the government, and we've just struck up an alliance, almost managed to strike an alliance with RJD in Bihar. You lost the promise from TRS, which earlier said that they will merge with you. It doesn't seem that they will even have a pre-poll alliance with you. Then you've lost Ramvilas Paswan to BJP, and during the course of last 5 years, you lost Mamata Banerjee, you lost Karunanidhi. The losses are mounting up.
None of these is a loss as yet. Please remember, Tamil Nadu alliances have not been sewn up. We never had an alliance with Ramvilas Paswan. So, with regard to 2009, there's been no change. And there was no damage that, Ramvilas Paswan could do either to us or any gain for himself. I don't think he won a single seat last time.
No, he did not.
So, Mr. Paswan is, in that sense, was just a fair weather thing. He probably believes that he may get something out of Bihar. But please remember, Ramvilas Paswan ji came to us as a package with Lalu ji. And therefore, I think it's between him and Mr. Lalu to decide what is it, the package.
What about Andhra Pradesh? You lost.
TRS again, we didn't have an alliance last time. TRS broke alliance with us.
Yes, you did not have an alliance, but there was a promise from the TRS that they will merge. They broke the promise.
I don't think there was any promise. There were constant statements by them which said that they could align with us, they could merge with us.
Isn't that a setback to Congress?
No, not really. See, our promise was to give Telangana. And I think if you go to Telangana today, the name of Sonia Gandhi ji is the most prominent name. People are believe that Mrs. Gandhi has given them Telangana, and they will vote wholeheartedly for Mrs. Gandhi. So I think Telangana, we are the front party. I think we'll probably sweep all the seats there. So whether somebody wants to align us or not is not something that is going to make too much difference.
And then what about Tamil Nadu? DMK Patriarch and his successor are not.
Tamil Nadu we don't know, because nothing is finalized as yet. Whether it will be DMK and not DMK, Vijayakant or whatever, or whether there will be alliances or not. I think let the Antony committee and their discussions fructify. It's very early to say so. I don't think any alliances have been sewn up except Anna DMK and CPM. I think that's probably the only pre-poll alliance that's been announced. So let the announces come. I think you are a little early in your judgment.
So you're still hopeful that as far as alliances...
I'm not hopeful. The processes are going on. Hope comes when something may not be happening. But it's not a matter of hope. It's a matter of how alliances will be sewn in. Please remember the 2004 outstanding alliances that Sonia ji did. Many of them were just 10-15 days before the actual process started. So you see, a lot of it has to be done keeping a lot of things in mind. Remember, we've had 9.5-10 years of fairly good relations with most of our allies. Some of them had certain, issues of so-called principles, but they may have gone away or for whatever reasons that they want. So let's see how the realignment takes place.
Okay, great. We'll continue our conversation with Mr. Dikshit when we come back after a break, and we'll definitely ask him about other players in the field such as the Third Front, and let's not forget the Aam Aadmi Party. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Mr. Dikshit is still with us. Sir, let's move on to a slightly different topic. Very related, but then other fronts which are emerging, other new emerging political outfits. Let's start with the Third Front / Federal Front. What do you make of it? Is it going to be...
No, it keeps coming up. It's actually, what's happened is there has been some fractured politics for a while. A lot of regional satraps or parties have come up. Most of them are family oriented, and they have some relevance in their regional politics because, today it's very easy to raise up a rhetoric of state versus center, only look at local issues and, talk about them, and therefore sometimes they endear people little more than the Congress, and they have their political space. Now, how do you have a political space nationally or relevance nationally? And I think therefore before every election, this third front bogey comes up, more to convince their voters that while you may have given us some MLAs, sometimes even a government locally, we are also relevant nationally. So that is, it's actually more, I think, an argument to win over some MP, because otherwise most of the electorate will think that, RJD or Mamta ji or Jayalalitha ji or any of the others don't have, why should we send MPs to them also? MPs to them you send if they seem to have some kind of a bargaining power or relevance nationally.
So you believe it's a seasonal phenomenon?
So seasonal it happens more to as a strategy to make yourself feel relevant, because you're not relevant with 39 seats in Tamil Nadu, but you're relevant on a 300 seat front across India. So you try and give that relevance and win some members of parliament, which happens each time. I won't make it anything beyond that.
Okay, what about another new entrant in the Indian politics? That's Aam Aadmi Party, led by Arvind Kejriwal, the ex-chief minister of and city of Delhi, courtesy the Congress party, which was supporting them from outside.
No, they have some relevance in Delhi. Unfortunately, I think they completely messed up the opportunity they got in Delhi. And while on the front of rhetoric and large promises, they seem to have some relevance, and they've kind of tried to take on this anti-corruption front. I think I actually feel bit of sadness for them, because I think they could have been able to, make themselves more relevant. But I think in Delhi they've got stuck in the kind of hole they built for themselves,
so
which is the huge promises. And I think outside Delhi they don't seem to have a relevance, because all the reports, all the various channels, in fact some channels who used to almost make him sound like a prime minister 2 months ago are showing that they are not even getting 4 or 5% votes.
I must say,
so that seems to have dulled. I mean, I'm just going on that because I don't know much of the political scenario out of Delhi.
This statement from you sounds like a deja vu, because just before the assembly elections also some of the statements from the Congress party and senior leaders were that Mr. Kejriwal and his party is completely irrelevant. They will not even win a single seat.
No, not necessarily.
They finally managed to run the government, won 28 seats, obviously with your support. So isn't it sort of deja vu that again you're writing them off?
No, it's not that. Please remember, the kind of traction they got in the media before the Delhi elections was something that actually helped them build up. I think if they'd got as much support or balanced support to all other parties, and I think media had been as critical or critiquing them as much as they were critiquing us and the BJP, things would have been very different. You give a party a field run, it makes a difference. But Delhi is very different. I think outside India, as I said, all these very surveys that suddenly showed him to have become the prime minister are now finding that it's not getting the kind of support it should. I mean, his rallies in UP have been.
But won't you agree with the statement given by the ex-chief minister of Delhi, Ms. Sheila Dikshit, that this was sort of the inference was this was sort of a bolt from the blue. This was not expected.
No, it may not have been expected by some people. I mean, I'm not giving my personal opinion. Obviously, you don't expect a new party to, which had no basis and in fact almost no logic to what they were announcing. One never thought that, this kind of a completely, subsidy based regime is something people like, but sometimes it happens.
You have a political stake in the NCT of Delhi. You are a 2-time MP from the East Delhi constituency. Do you believe that the decision to support Aam Aadmi Party or prop them up or prop Arvind Kejriwal as the Chief Minister of Delhi was a mistake?
No, it's not a matter of propping.
Was it a mistake or was it?
No, see, we have to keep BJP out very clearly. It's a communal party, and it messes up a state every time it goes in, what they did between 93 and 98. So very clearly, and people had expressed some sympathy and support for Mr. Kejriwal. And so there was no other option, I think, because we want a government. After all, Delhi cannot suffer. It's had 15 years of tremendous growth. And you can't have that just disappearing because, there's indecision at the political level. So I think as a principal stand, we supported the government and we hope they will continue. They realized that they were tying themselves in knots, and from the very 5th or 6th day, I mean, on a few TV channels, not Rajya Sabha TV, but other TV channels had very clearly stated that in the next available opportunity, they'll run away because they've realized that what they bit into is something they can't swallow. So when they found an opportunity, they tried to make a moral issue out of it and escaped. And that's what happened.
Okay, great. So it seems with all the pointers which we have discussed, it seems it's going to be a very interesting fight. Since you were also the chief whip of your party in the outgoing Lok Sabha, that's the 15th Lok Sabha, I must ask you this question. 15th Lok Sabha will be known and remembered for the maximum number of time lost due to disruptions, due to slogan shouting, the least amount of legislative work which could have been done in any Lok Sabha since independence. Do you believe that the government could have done things a little more differently on the floor of the House, or do you believe that it was, and the entire blame lies with the opposition?
No, it's not that. I think the kind of fractured mandate that came, and the biggest problem is that some of our regional parties are still not mature on a national front. And while they get their support in their states, I think they believe that constant conflict with the center, and somewhere where they question the whole issue of federal state, that should become a political issue rather than an administrative issue. And I think that is one of the reasons why this kind of a politics remained. UP's battles were fought in parliament, Bihar's battles were fought in parliament, Bengal's battles were fought in parliament. So if and they are trying to make parliament as an extension of the street fights they have in their own states, and that's an unfortunate part, and that will continue. But we also have to realize that ultimately strong national party, and the only national party is the Indian National Congress, will have to ultimately be brought back with far more strength in the mandate so that parliament also functions. But let me also put it this way. It's not also what is lost what this UPA 2's term will be remembered for. It should also be remembered for some of the most progressive legislation that the UPA 2 has done. And that is where, unfortunately, if you term it as something being remembered for lost days, you could have also said that it's something that should be remembered for the most progressive legislation perhaps seen since 1947. Okay. Some of the rights and the bills that have been brought on by this parliament is something that's going to change India in the coming years. And it really depends on whether you want to show the days lost on the kind of legislation that this government brought.
Okay, well, let's leave that question to the people of this country, who will definitely go ahead and elect a new government in the next 2 months. The cycle will be complete. We'll have to wait and watch as to whether or not people will come up with an answer to all these problems which have been faced by them, by the politicians, by the country in the last 5 years. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for being with Rajya Sabha TV. We'll come back next week with a different personality at a different time. Thank you.